Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third session. Can you believe it? This is already the third session. Thank you so much for joining us. We heard a little bit about your experience so far. I'm so happy that you were able to meet your mentor coach, that you were given some great advice, that overall your experience is good, and hopefully even will even get better. So with that, I love to start our third session, Build Confidence. Just a few quick reminders. Of course, you're all aware that, it is better for echoing and for just the overall experience to mute your mic unless you're speaking or asking questions. Please turn your camera on. It's great to see your faces, especially doing this work from home still experience where we don't get to meet a lot of people in person. Please ask questions in the chat function whenever. We'll moderate, we'll answer, and if not, it'll be there. So when we have some time for questions, we will answer them. This session is recorded. We will share the session with you afterwards and also add it to the program hub. And then, of course, treat everyone with respect. We have zero tolerance policy for any harassment of any kind, which you're all are respecting anyway. So thank you for that. Next slide, a little bit of what we've gone through last week, a little bit of our journey. Last week we had the Become a Mentor. Lucero gave us a lot of, and Ivana gave us a lot of great toolkits, a lot of great tips and structures and modules to follow. We talked about what it takes to be a great mentor. We discovered the power of coaching, listening, feedback techniques, and then also practice them, hopefully in a safe setting. So now I'm hoping that you feel confident with the tools that you received to start actually doing some mentorship, which we'll talk about more soon. Hopefully you've already met your mentor coach for the second time. And that you got some best practices from the meeting guidelines doc that we shared with you. And then also, we'll talk more about what to expect with the practical experience soon. And hopefully you also had the opportunity to get some one-on-one communication coaching sessions with Pitch Ninja, which is Lucero's company, our partner in this. So yeah, that was last week. Let's talk about this week. This week, we'll focus on practical experience, build your confidence. That's module 3. This session is all about shadowing and practicing. And you will be put into groups and get a chance to practice the role of mentor several times in different ways, practice different scenarios, and then you'll receive actionable feedback. We also would love for you to meet your mentor coach again this week. And if you haven't done so, please complete your one-on-one communication coaching as well. Great. With that, we're going to start our practical experience, which is a very exciting part of the program. And I'll hand it over to my colleague, Alejandra, to tell us more about that. Ale?
Thank you, Shiri. Good morning. Hello. Great to see everyone again. We are halfway through the program and we are ready to the practical experience. For that, we have 2 specific requirements. The first one is shadowing. We are still confirming the spaces with the invited startups. We will be updating the external hub, but please check the hub today afternoon or tomorrow, and please add your names. And the second one is you as a mentor. Please help us by adding your name in the external hub with your available slots. We will also send you an email. Please complete the form where we ask for a photo, a short biography, and areas of expertise to share with the startups you will be mentoring. So we will send the email today. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thanks, Ale. A lot to look forward to. I'm really excited about this part of the program where we are actually being integrated into existing programs, Google programs in LATAM. So it's a great opportunity both to shadow and hear and kind of get the feel and experience of, a mentoring session live without having the pressure of being the mentor, but then also getting those experiences with actually mentoring and learning a lot and kind of reflecting, getting feedback from your mentors as well. So I'm really excited about it. And thank you, Ale, for organizing and making sure that this happens. All right, next week, it'll be module 4. We have prepared a really, really interesting and hopefully engaging and insightful panel discussion with experienced mentors, both from Google and outside of Google, to talk about how they navigate mentor relationships. Could be really tricky, so it's going to be interesting. So come prepared with questions, yeah, just it's going to be great, and you will be eventually accelerator mentors. So this is an opportunity to really ask all your questions. And with that, well, maybe let's see if we have any questions so far before I'll hand it over to Sarah. Any immediate questions? All right, great. Well, Lucero, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Sherry. Welcome back, everyone. I'm happy to see, I think we have a full house, so fantastic. You're coming back, you're loving the content. Hopefully, I'm seeing great comments in the chat. So great, we are doing module 3, as Sherry said, building confidence. So hopefully with the learnings of 1 and 2, it's kind of all coming together. With the experiences that you've had in between the sessions with your mentor coaches. And so this session is all about kind of rolling up your sleeves and really practicing for the majority of the part, because you've probably heard a lot of toolkits, frameworks from me in the past 2 sessions. So it's now over to you to practice in a safe space. I do want to emphasize that. And so we've been getting you into groups in modules 1 and 2 to get to know each other. So you'll be in groups again, maybe with the same people, different people, a mixture. But from what I experienced in the last module, it's all coming together. You're a great group of women, and a fantastic opportunity to keep going and building that network. So you know me, I won't introduce myself, but what I'd like to do is we do have someone new by the name of Lynn Barstow, who has kindly agreed to co-facilitate with me. Woohoo! So you'll hear another voice. Not to say that you're tired of my voice, but it's always great. I'm always a big fan of bringing other people in, different perspectives, because we can all learn from each other's experience. I've certainly been learning from Lynn as we've been preparing this workshop. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lynn. I think she's joined to introduce herself and say a few words.
Thank you, Lucera, and it's so nice to be with everyone today. I actually, I'm so happy to see some familiar faces from the mentoring program and from other friendships in the LATAM region. So it's great to be here today to talk about confidence, which I think all of us, no matter how confident we are in certain aspects of our life, we can use it in others. So I'd love for the session to be interactive today and just share a lot of our experiences so that we can elevate each other up and feeling confident as mentors. So my background is I'm the founding and managing partner of Meet to Institute and Meet to Ventures. So I've been working with early stage startups, tech startups in LATAM, helping kind of bridge the experience between Silicon Valley and LATAM startups and help the talent and the amazing companies that I see in this region get the funding and the business connections that I think they deserve. And obviously we've seen so much in the last couple of years exploding in this area and the region. So I think we're in a great place. And we need more mentors, and we need more confident startups in our region. So looking forward to working with you on this today. Thanks, Lucera.
Thank you, Lynn. So a couple I'll rephrase, but you've heard this before in our previous sessions. We're on module 3, so you know there's a couple more left, as Sherry said. I won't labor on this point, but again, following on from what Sherry said, the presence The engagement, I encourage that again, because the first 2 modules were amazing, fantastic. I was telling Lynn, you're an amazing group of people. You get off mute, you go on chat, you're very, talkative. So let's continue that, because not only do we learn from you, but of course you're learning from us and with each other. So please do that. Obviously, sort of, if you can, off camera, and raising hands and whatnot. I think we do a good job of making sure that we read comments and we see your hands go up when you want to get off mic. So that's fantastic. Let's continue that in the spirit of engagement. So just before we sort of get Lynn back in, I'd love, and I saw some comments already, but I'd love to just get some feedback or just key takeaways. If you can say sort of one thing you've learned or one thing that was an aha moment. For those of you that had your communication coaching session, what would that be? I know Victoria mentioned something here in the chat that it was great, +1 from Pamela, but what was that sort of key takeaway or aha moment as we think about, the topic of confidence, of communication, of how you come across? Anyone want to share? Candy.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. So it was so fun, but it was so complicated to record my video in English because when I speak in English, I need to write first. And it's not the same when I do it in Spanish, right? So it was so fun see my video without voice and see all my faces, the faces that I do every time that I'm speaking. So that was so fun. And my biggest learn is the pauses, because I speak so fast. Even if it's a language that I know, I don't know. So I speak really fast. So the tips that Julie gave me to make these pauses was amazing. So I was absolutely practical. I was doing that. Of course, is for when you're making a pitch, and that works perfectly to me. So make these pauses between your speaking in specific moments. So I finally identified that moments and make these spaces. So that was amazing for me.
Okay, the power of the pause, which, yeah, I mean, I have a tendency to speak quickly as well. So hopefully these last couple modules you've been able to understand, because I do have to take a moment and but yeah, the power of the pause, right? And some people are uncomfortable sometimes with that silence, but being aware, because it's very powerful. You make a statement, you pause. And I think that's a great point, Candy, as well, when you're mentoring as a mentor, right? And it's back to the confidence that, you ask a question, if the mentee is thinking about it or there's no response straight away, taking the moment to continue the pause, because the more sort of you leave the time to reflect, the mentee may come up with that answer, may come up with the next thing, right? As opposed to kind of always having to intervene because the pause is a little bit too long and it's uncomfortable. And so sitting with that. And I know it's a skill that, you learn. It's not something that comes automatically to people necessarily, but it's a great takeaway. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Yes, Belen.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to share that my session was kind of therapeutic. But Sarah teach me a lot of things, and when she asked me to share my own feedback or my own thoughts about my video, I said that, for example, I could see that there was some lack of confidence, but she made me realize that only I could see that I came across as a very confident person, that I had very good posture. And the feedback that she gave me was kind of the opposite of what I was seeing. And that helped me a lot to gain confidence as well, and realize that I wasn't really very good at it first, or I am not perfect or great yet, but this authenticity will help me thrive in the future. And she told me to work on that.
Amazing. So authenticity, how you are, as you are, And I think you made a great point of the little sort of voices that we tell ourselves, right? We are our own worst critics, right?
Yeah.
So it's human nature. I don't want to say it's a human flaw, but yes, we are. We cringe, or we do something, we deliver something, and we focus on, oh, what didn't go well? And when in fact the audience may have said, oh, you were amazing, I didn't even notice. And you're like, oh. So that's a great point. And then how you come across you as you are. So not necessarily changing that. So that's great. Thank you for that. We see a couple of comments in the chat as well. Thank you, Razia. Learning a lot of qualities, really good, having positive feedback. Great to see the points on improvement. Sandra, the power of posture in front of the camera. You're right. Leveraging body language, right? So that's a great point. The tendency, I mean, look, I was slouching a little bit right now, and you made me realize, just kind of standing up. And I mean, automatically I can feel my voice projecting a little bit more when I do that. So again, things I miss as well. So great use of metaphors to make a point to communicate. Marcela, fantastic. The power and the importance of being vulnerable. Facial expressions and hand movements. Yes. Pamela, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I had my session with Adam, and when we analyzed the video without the audio, I said, who is this angry person? I look very serious. I would like to smile more. It's something I always forget to. I start speaking, but I forget how to what is my expression in my face. I would like to smile more to create a bonding with the public. And he also gave me the tip to make poses when I'm giving my pitch. But I think the facial expression is something I would like to improve in my pitches.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, right? Because, not that we have a mirror in front of ourselves all the time. I think with video, it might be a little bit easier. Well, certainly you were recording, so you could have maybe seen yourself or not. But like, just think about your videos, meetings with your mentees, where, if you're in this virtual setting, you might see yourself right in the corner. And I've certainly, since we've been in this virtual mode, I certainly see myself a lot more, right? And I can see how I express myself, and I can see if I'm smiling or not, because it's just that glare, because you see a little square. But great points, because that may be something to help you if you're able to see yourself a little bit, to see your expressions. But definitely when you smile, right? Because it gives you that good moment of smiling with others, and you invite the smile back. So thank you for sharing. Sandra, looking at the camera when you speak instead of the little square. Yeah, you're right. Some tendencies to look at yourself the whole time versus the square. Ellie, complete opposite. I always thought that I was dull when talking, but when I saw the video without sound, I do smile a lot more and have gestures. Yeah, so great takeaways. Well, so thank you very much for going through the process. I'm glad it was useful. I know there are a few of you that still have to go through, and so we're keeping it open for tomorrow and Wednesday. I obviously kind of requested it to happen today, so you could use the learnings for today, but it's not a make or break. It's absolutely fine if you didn't manage. I know there were a couple hiccups with the scheduling, but we can obviously continue with you tomorrow or Wednesday or going forward this week. So I'll make sure that those have signed up have their sessions. Fabulous. Okay, with that, I'll hand it to Lynn.
Thank you. We're going to start this session out with a quote, because it's one of my favorite quotes that I think has helped me in all aspects, all my journeys in life. And I actually heard this from Fred Wilson. If any one of you are familiar with the A16Z podcast and email, but he had mentioned it once. I looked it up and I pinned it up. I was starting my journey as a venture capital. I was starting my own fund, and I'd never been in VC before. And I loved this because it said the expert at anything was once a beginner. And it's true. It's like everybody starts from somewhere. And you look at everyone you admire, and they were all beginners. So we can all have that beginner mindset and understand that the journey is as important as the results. But, we have a process, and we can learn through our experiences. And the same thing is with mentoring. And mentoring is really about connecting with people and helping them along their journey based on what you've learned and the experience that you've had, so that you can share this wisdom and these learnings and failures and all that you do with someone else to help ease their path a little bit. So it's a really powerful endeavor that you're all embarking on and agreeing to. And I know some of you have been doing it for a long time. So as I was telling Lucero, it's like I'm excited about these workshops because I've never actually had mentoring workshops before. And so I'm looking forward to learning as well. I've been mentoring for about 6 years inside of the Google program, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences that I have professionally, because I really get to learn a lot from all the mentees that I'm working with, learn about their companies, learn about what's making them good, and also learn about myself and helping myself grow as somebody who can help share experiences and build my confidence too, because as I've continued to mentor, I realize that I actually do have valuable learnings that I can share with people to help them on their journey. So I love this saying. I actually didn't know it was from Helen Hayes, and there are a couple of variations on it, but I think it's a good starting point for where we're going. We can move to the next slide. So Lucero is great enough, as we were working together on putting the session together, to look at the learning model and how we build confidence. But I'd like to kind of start it out with a poll in the chat. If you can all start with, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first one is, how confident do you feel on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being low and 5 being high, with your core business? So the business that you do on a daily basis, how confident are you in your level of excellence in that endeavor? If you can just add it in the chat. Okay, we're getting mostly 3s and 4s. Love to know, anyone have a 5 out there? Okay, now, second question that I'd like to ask you is, how confident are you as a mentor today in your ability to mentor another team or another CEO or Google startup founder? Okay, got some good variations. We're trending just slightly lower on the mentoring, but I want to just propose this to you. I think one of the things, sometimes we have in mind that mentoring is different than what we do in our daily life, but just to suggest to you that the skills that you have in your everyday career and business and what you're bringing to the table can actually be one of your strengths as a mentor. So you can take those aspects of your everyday life that you're excelling at and bring them into the mentoring relationship in order to boost your confidence as a mentor. And the act of mentoring will expand over time, but even if you're starting as a mentor, what I would suggest you do is to bring those qualities and those aspects of your everyday work into the mentoring relationship and use that to really boost your confidence as a mentor. And I'll give you an example. So I'm in venture capital. So what I do is I evaluate pitch decks of companies. I look for investment opportunities, and I invest in companies that I think are worthwhile. So when I'm mentoring, when I first started, I remember walking into the central office in Mexico City, and it's all buzzing with CEOs and a lot of, it's got an AI focus to it. So there are a lot of really, really smart technical people in there. And I'm thinking, oh no, what can I add to the mentoring experience of these CEOs? But I do realize that almost everyone there needs to raise money. Everyone there has a story to tell about their business. And so my strengths were helping them shape their story into something that could help them be successful in raising funding, and also help them in their path and thinking about fundraising as they grow their business and expand. So I took what I do on an everyday basis and was able to convert that into the mentoring relationship to give valuable lessons to the mentee. So I think a lot of this is all in the way you set it up. So first, when you think about, when you sit down with the mentoring, with the mentee, you have some give and take, and you have the introduction. I know you talked about communication already, but part of it too is just establishing, especially in the early days. So if we look at this path, we've got our comfort zone, and then we expand out to the fear zone, learning zone, and the growth zone. And those are all areas that you are developing as a mentee. So your comfort zone might be where you're starting out if it's your first experience as a mentor. And so what you might want to do is take what you know and what you really know you excel at and bring that into the mentoring relationship in order that you arrive with a level of confidence that you can really share your expertise and bring value to the time that you spend with the mentee. Then as you continue to grow as a mentor, you can expand out, so you can go from talking only about the things that you know and that you're most comfortable to asking questions and growing with the mentoring relationship into more, in my case, more technical or more growth-oriented, growth development, things that a business CEO might be dealing with on an everyday basis that I might not be dealing with on an everyday basis, and then expand from there. So let me just put it out to everybody. Can anyone want to share what they feel is one of their skill sets that they could bring to a mentoring relationship, as the example that I gave you in fundraising and storytelling in pitch deck? So anyone want to join in and talk about something that they feel they could bring in? Candy?
Thank you, Lime. Some of the things that happen with my entrepreneurs is that they always say like, this is gonna impact 100,000 people, for example, right? And I was like, have no idea how many is 100,000 people. So you need to compare that with something. And because in Mexico we love soccer, and I love soccer, is like, how many stadiums are 100,000 people, for example? Or this is, I don't know, how many tons of garbage. Okay, but I can imagine that. So how they can change the story in order, because what I always say is like, you understand your problem, but I don't know. I have nothing about the problem that you want or can to solve. So how you can put that in something that I can imagine. And of course, I have no that data, right? I have no idea how many spaces are in a stadium or how many garbage you can put in a specific place. So what I always say is like, I'm not expert, but the thing that I want to show you is how to search for this kind of information that can be useful for you. So if we do it together, like let's see how many people you can put in a stadium, for example, they will learn that all these things that they doesn't have or they doesn't know, maybe no one knows them, but you can find it in Google. It's so easy to find this information. So show them how to find this information. I think is one of the most important things when you are mentoring. Like, you don't know, I don't know, let's try and search together, right?
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Candy. Anyone else want to bring in what one of your unique skill sets that you might be able to bring to the mentoring relationship? What can you think of that would be applicable to your day-to-day life? Ellie?
Hi, I work in community programs at Techstars, and I was thinking that I'm building community all the time. Like that's making connections, and getting to know people, and sometimes like try to figure out operations for a wide network of volunteers. And I was thinking to to maybe bring that community building aspect to the founders, because right now I see a trend of growth by community, and I think that's something that there's not a lot of material out there, and maybe that experience that I have can help founders to see how they can, transform their audiences or stakeholders into community members of their company.
I think that's a super powerful one, Ellie, and I completely agree with you. I'm seeing a massive trend in success, and even among VCs or, and certainly with startups, that the power of your community really helps ensure the longevity of your company and your product. And a lot of people who are very good on a technical basis, and I think in the Google program, because it is so oriented in LATAM toward AI, you'll see quite a few very technical founders that may be less comfortable with how you actually build community, and maybe less familiar with social media and the power of that. Sometimes we tend to think of being on Twitter too much as being a distraction, but I think if you do spend time on there in the LATAM community, you find some really, really strong voices who contribute to the community and really build their business on that. So I think those learnings can be enormously helpful for founders who are less comfortable, and even just to ask the question of how much you're using the idea of community building in your business. Marcela.
Hi, Lynn. Super nice to see you here. So I actually have a question for you, because one of and one of the things that I do in my business is design programs for startups. So one of my strengths is to know all the experts and to identify the talent in people. But that's kind of like the next step for me as a mentor would be to connect the person with someone else. And for me, that feels like I'm not actually doing the work, but I'm just telling them like, oh, go and talk to that person, like the expert in marketing or fundraising or whatever, because that's my strength, my network, and knowing the people that is good at their job. Does that make sense?
Your question makes sense, but I think that your thought process is not correct. I think making those connections are one of the most powerful things that a mentor can do. I know a lot of, at the end of a mentoring session, what I always use is the last 5 minutes to kind of wrap up with the mentee and do next steps. And often my next steps include, I need to introduce you to this person or to that person because they can help you in this fintech relationship, or they're a lawyer that can help you unravel this issue with your cap table, or I have this person who's great at community building who can help you, rethink that, or someone who's a great graphic designer who can help you with this terrible looking deck that you have. So a mentor isn't expected to have all of the answers, but I think having a network of contacts that you can refer them to can be a super, super valuable way to think of it. And for those of you who don't know Marcela is one of the great networkers in the entire LATAM community. So you should make a point of getting to know her and access her Rolodex and her community.
Thank you so much. And of course, I'm available for any of you that I can help you with. But that has actually been my challenge, because I'm not specialized on any of the topics that usually people ask for, like UX or marketing or etc. Then I feel like nobody asks for my help because they don't know what can I help with. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but another thing too is, and both what you and
I don't know how to promote myself either.
Yeah, and I think both you and Eli, just talking about community building, this really is a powerful trend that I'm seeing more and more among all, and I think it came out of COVID, as people were, we've seen this whole creator economy and people creating their own businesses, and a lot of coaches doing this sort of development, and so it's on the radar. And I think most businesses may have thought, traditional marketing, what is traditional marketing? Marketing is really a sense of building community with your stakeholders. So, you can actually talk about the importance of building a network and how they might go about that. And that will vary based on the business that they have. But, you know, anything from a ride share to a, I don't know, a chat bot to a transportation company. I mean, all of these, the more loyalty you build with your stakeholders, with your customers, the more you give them a reason to connect deeply with your company, the more you have a chance of success, and it lowers your customer acquisition costs by having community building. And even, you know, within building a network as a CEO, it's like, what are the important parts of doing that? And you don't want to live in a vacuum. And I think, especially if you're in the LATAM region, we're now at this inflection point where, you know, one of the successes of Silicon Valley was the incredible sharing of network that you saw there. And that, I think, really helped drive the success of that region. And we now have the opportunity to recreate that here in LATAM and in Mexico by really, like, I would encourage this group to continue to really stay in contact with one another, to share contacts, because that sort of help, whether it's for hiring key talent, whether it's for developing yourself as a CEO and sharing struggles and problems that you have, whether it's for finding good technical expertise or putting on events jointly that are complementary. I mean, there's a lot that we can do together, but coming kind of out of the Silicon Valley environment and community, that was the ethos that it was so powerful to me, was how incredibly helpful everybody was. And the network is where that came from. I mean, I came out of Wall Street where it was really cutthroat and nobody helped anybody do anything. I mean, you had to like claw your way to the top there. And then when I, you know, switched and moved in from finance to tech, I mean, I really couldn't believe it when I'd go to a coffee meeting and 5 minutes after I left, I had an email with 5 emails with introductions made from the community. So your network can be a super powerful asset, and sharing. And I would encourage everyone to do that when you're ending your mentee's session. Who can I introduce this person to help them further their cause? So rather than, I'm not sure if this is a skill, I think we should all adopt the networking helpfulness to that and learn from Marcella that, yes, think of 3 people I can introduce this founder to that can help them on their journey. So it doesn't become just about you, but who you can broaden that relationship with. Victoria.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi, Lynn. Well, first of all, I'm very, let's say, agree, you know, with everything that you said about like the power of like making connections in itself. So very aligned, let's say, with that. But one other thing that I wanted to mention is in terms of like the advice, you know, that we can provide is timing. So especially, for example, entrepreneurs, you know, in the early stages, you know, they are like wild horses that just want to like run, you know, and so on. And then you need to kind of like, you know, like provide some advice in terms of, you know, when is the best time to do one thing or the other. And that is, you know, sometimes because we've learned it either the easy or the hard way, you know. But for example, it happened, you know, to me that an entrepreneur wanted me, you know, to make him, you know, an intro, you know, with the largest bank in Colombia. And I was like, you still don't have a product. Let's just wait for a few weeks, you know, until, you know, you have something to show. And, you know, and then maybe, you know, that will be a better, you know, moment, you know, for you to actually, you know, make this connection and so on. Right. So I think that sometimes, you know, timing is also very important, you know, in that journey, let's say, of the entrepreneur. And so I found, you know, in my experience, you know, that was also a great value, let's say, to add, you know, to these startups or entrepreneurs to know, you know, better, or to try to define, let's say, in a better way, when is the right time, you know, to do one thing or the other.
You're absolutely correct on that. And I do see, you know, because I have contacts in Silicon Valley, it's like people want to be introduced to Andreessen Horowitz or Sequoia or, you know, some of the top firms, which I have contacts to, but I will not. I mean, you also have to use your network very, very cautiously too. So you just be honest with the startup and just say, you're not ready for that level yet. And it's very clear. I mean, and this is one thing, you know, in terms of this is very specific to funding, but you need to know who you're approaching, and you need to know that it's a match. Otherwise, you you ruin that relationship. On the other hand, it's not a bad thing for a founder to start developing relationships with funds or with people they want to know through regular updates and just ongoing communication that helps set the stage and set the path for a meaningful conversation later on, because then the individual that they're trying to reach out to will have a record of communication over time. So it's not just they go to them when they need something, or when they, with any relationship, they develop a relationship over time. But that's very valuable. Victoria, what business are you in? Are you in VC or
Fintech?
Fintech. Okay, so you have a startup. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, let's shift the question a little bit. So, what could you think of that you might be able to learn more about? I mean, where would your stretch goal be? So something that is not in your comfort zone, but in your own personal growth zone, that you would like to be able to mentor in, but you might not yet feel confident enough to do so. So is there anything in particular that you can think of, or that you'd like, anyone want to share kind of their idea of what they'd like to learn about and stretch themselves in terms of mentoring? Anyone? Okay. All right.
We're all thinking here, Lynn. That's a hard one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's talk a little bit more about. Is there anybody here that has technical skill sets that, well, even company building, like growth marketing or technical development, UX design, that can share some of their experiences in mentoring, or how they would approach the mentoring session? Anyone? Raisa.
Hi, well, I'm a tech person. What I do is a thing called skill building. It's a board when we get a stack on technology, like, so the person wants to be a specialist in front-end development. So we break this kind of specialist in a lot of topics and break a little more in little pieces so they can study on their own. They can buy a course is on their own responsibility to gain this knowledge. Then after this, they tested in, like, doing some challenge online, sent to a person who is a specialist on the subject, and see if their technical skills was level up. So it's a thing that I do as a developer, and a lot of persons that people around me do too. And that was one thing that I brought on my technical group, and works. Sorry, my English. I hope you all understand what I said. And there's other things in marketing that I can help, because people think that I'm creative. So I try to help them when they have some problem. I try to listen to them and think, so I saw a commercial when I was a kid. They do this, 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 this. And I think if you approach in the way similar, you can get this kind of persons, of audience. So I try and do this. I don't know if I help it.
No, that's great. And I think that is important. I mean, the one thing that Raisa brought up that I think that I just want to kind of elevate the thought process is really, sometimes we will go into a mentoring session, especially at the beginning, and we think it's all about us sharing information with the mentee. But so much of it is actually learning from the mentee really what they need and what they want and what they're looking for. And so one of the tips that I would have is, I always start by asking the mentee what their origin story is, like how they how they came to come up with this idea and this product. And it's something that I always ask as a VC, because I always find that the closer the connection is to the product or to the company that they're building, the more successful I believe it has a chance of being. Not always, but in their telling of that story, you'll get a lot of cues as to how to connect best with them. And you probably covered a lot of this in communication in the previous model, so I won't dwell on it so much. But in the origin story, you'll also find out where their skill sets are and where their needs are. So to Rice's point, it's like they may approach something from one aspect, but if you can help direct them or just show them a path to be thinking about it in different ways. And I do find that sometimes if I'm dealing with a very technical team, they'll start with all the technology when they're telling their story because that's what they really love. And yet that could lose somebody who's not as technical to them. So by getting them to think about things in terms of their audience, are they presenting to a business person who just needs to get more sales and they don't really care how they get it, so they don't need to know the whole technical thing. They need the end result of what that product is going to do. But and then in telling that story, I think that it's also really important. When I start a mentoring session, I usually just ask them to tell me a little bit about themselves and their product, and then I say a little bit about myself and where I feel I can offer the most help. So I kind of set the expectation. So I'll say, who I am, what I do, why how long I've been with the Google program. And I say, my expertise is in storytelling, fundraising, evaluating your deck. And I think these are the areas that I can help you the most in. Do you have any needs particular to that area? And Ally does a great job of matching up the mentors and the mentees, often based on what they're looking to accomplish. So generally there's an overlap in there. So then we tend to focus our time. What I want to do is make sure that the time that you have with this mentee is most valuable based on your skill set and their needs. So that I think can really help elevate the confidence level, because that you're going to be talking about something where you can actually add real value. And then you try and get quickly to the point of what their needs are relative to what your expertise is. And I think that's the most important way to help establish confidence, is setting the tone in the early part of the meeting where you know what their needs are, and you've also expressed to them where you feel that you can help them the most. And then you can take it in different directions as you go forward from there. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions about that? And Lucera, I'm not sure how we are on time, so please maybe give me a heads up or tell me how we're doing and move us along whenever the need is.
Yeah, no worries. I think, so let's say another 5 or 6 minutes would be okay. I just moved on from the previous slide to the next slide, which is the last slide here. But I think you mentioned a couple of things. But yes, we can go for five or so minutes.
Okay. Yep. Actually, this it's as if I was reading from the slide. So, okay. Well, I'd like to hear from someone else in the group too. If you can give me experience, like your experience. Okay, Luisa.
Hey, thank you for all the insight. It was very, it was very great. So when I'm talking to technical teams, I usually work with more like product side, and also leadership and remote work, because that's kind of like where my strengths are. I usually try to get into the deeper questions, because they usually have like a very technical product or engineering kind of question. But then when you go deep into what is happening, then there's a lot of sometimes communication problems between teams, or like there are like very important things that are like lying below like the main problem that they usually expose. So it's very common for me to just kind of like keep asking questions until I get to the actual problem. And it usually is not very technical. It usually is more like what you said, like maybe they don't have an origin story, or they don't have like values, very very organized values, or they don't have a clear mission or a clear purpose, or they're launching a product or a service but they don't know why. So that's kind of like my experience when working with very technical teams, that sometimes it's not easy for them to communicate also, because there is very specific and technical products, but they don't know how to communicate. And that's actually one of the problems that we're experiencing with our, I mean, I work with a holding company, and all of the companies are tech companies. And one of the big issues that I'm seeing with all of the companies, because all of the CEOs are very technical, is that we understand our products, but we don't know how to communicate outside on why our products are so great. And most of the time, we try to communicate them through technical explanations that people don't usually understand.
Yeah, that's so, I think that's so powerful and so common. I mean, with the engineering mindset, often and first of all, I mean, even though I talk about loving storytelling, and that's my skill set, it's like I'm a total technical geek. I mean, I really love, I read AI manuals for fun. Over right now it's more blockchain, but it's like I spend hours a day just reading technical information, because it's what I really love, and it's what turns me on about this whole space and working with it. And that's why I love working with the companies. And engineering mindset sometimes are looking at it from a problem solving. So the communication of what they do is needs a lot of help in many cases. And to have that balance of a technical mindset combined with taking a step back and seeing the big picture is important. But even an engineer will tell you, there was recently a team I was working with, and and they were focused on like what the immediate product was. But in talking to the very engineering oriented CEO, it's like, well, what is your vision? And it's like, I want machines and humans to talk to one another and to be seamless. And it's like, well, put that in your story, because it's like that vision of really having, so even engineers and technical people have big picture visions that are important to communicate and to draw out, and to be able to sit with that founder and really draw out what their big dream, big vision is. The other thing that Luisa mentioned that I think is really important and can be sometimes tricky when you're in the mentoring process, if you're not dealing with a single founder, but you're dealing with two founders or a team, which often the groups, at least in the in-person at Google, mentoring, there were teams that would come. And I think sometimes on the virtual one, it's a little easier to do one-on-one. But when you're dealing with teams, you'll often find this disparity in personalities, where one person will have one expertise and the other. And so they might be approaching the mentoring session from their different goals, or you can kind of see conflict between what they have. So it becomes a little more complex in doing that. But I think in a case like that, what I encourage you to do is, rather than you talking to one or the other team member, to really try and facilitate the communication between the two team members, because here's where you need to take a step back on your confidence level and understand that you might be there for an hour for a couple of sessions, but they're going to be there together forever. So the best thing you can do as a mentor is to really help facilitate the communication between those two team members, and ask the questions where they answer to one another, to say, what their vision is, to try and align their vision a little bit more, especially when they're talking in technical, or at least one of them is talking in technical terms. Okay. Probably time for one more share on mentoring skill sets. CD-ROM. Probably not.
Sorry for that.
I love it.
No, not my real name. My name is Cynthia. So sorry, I haven't changed that. Nice to meet you. My technical skill is that I am a lawyer, so I have to talk with the founders and with the team, and I have to give them advice. And there's something that you said about talking not just with one founder, but with two members, with probably two founders, two members of the team. And it's something that happens really frequently with me in my situation when I have to give them a mentorship, because they came to me and they ask how they can solve a specific problem. And I think that that's something that I have found very useful when I ask, like, each one, like, how do you feel the problem, and how do you feel the problem, and how each one think that it's the best solution. So I can understand the both sides, and I can understand what both of them wants to do, and what they are trying to seek, or what they are trying to do, so I can give the best advice. And obviously I mean, talking in a lawyer situation, in a law situation, um, my speaking is very technical. I have to explain, like, you if you want to raise money, you have to do this in the legal stuff. If you want to protect your product, you have to do this. If you have a due diligence, we have to check these points. And I have to explain, like, this is because of that. They are going to ask you this because, and I have to do a lot of explaining situations. And that's something that has a big difficulty too, because when you have to speak in a technical situation that they are not expert, and they come to you for an explaining, you have to use a non-technical language. And I think that's the biggest trouble there. You have to explain what you know in technical words, but with a simple language. And changing that sometimes is the hardest. I feel it is the hardest. So that would be my experience.
Yeah, I think that's pretty universal. I think we all get so comfortable in our niches, whether it's a community building, talking about social media metrics that somebody may have, that a technical AI developer may have no clue what what some of those are, versus an AI algorithm expert who might who might be tossing out terms to a lawyer who and I totally agree. And I think one of the things is, I'm sure that there would be a tendency for a mentee to perhaps ask you for specific legal advice. And I would say, whether you're an attorney, whether you're an investor, whether you're a graphic designer, whether, whatever your skill set is, your goal as a mentor isn't necessarily to share to tell them exactly how to do based on your perspective, but to tell them how to think about things. So, Cynthia, in your case, like, opening their mind to the fact that there are legal issues that need to be considered, and what they need to be thinking about in terms of IP protection, employee, guidelines. Partners are partnership agreements are the hardest thing, because sometimes in the beginning you don't want to offend each other's as a partner, but you need to get that set from the day one in order to ensure that you have successful, growth and evolution of the company. But so to get them thinking in terms of that, and not to be the answer for all of that, and also how to evaluate a lawyer. So when, because you may not be able to be the proper fit for everybody that you work with in the Google program, but to say, this is how you need to be thinking about a relationship with your lawyer. It's not just the most expensive law firm. It's not, who your cousin recommended. It's like, you need to have a level of confidence with your lawyer. Just like in raising funds, I have to continually tell people, it's not anybody who will give you a check. It's really thinking about it as a long-term relationship, and understanding, who they are, how they treat founders, what their size of their business is, who you'll actually be dealing with. So it's helping, from your perspective, no matter what your business is, if it's a graphic design or a creative aspect, what are some of the considerations you need to look for when you're looking for help too. So broadening that thought process, and you have an expertise. This is another level of confidence. So you're confident in knowing your industry and being able to share those, how to consider a relationship like that. In terms of evaluating that process. Lucera, how are we doing on time? Another share or move on?
I guess I'll ask the audience, because this is all very I'm loving it. So are there any other comments for Lynn before we move on? The next part is getting you into groups and practicing. But I am conscious that the conversation is very engaging and fruitful. So I don't want to, you know, I don't want to move on too quickly if there are still things that you want to say or you want Lynn's feedback or advice. So I'll pose the question. I'll gauge the energy from the audience. If you want to continue with Lynn for a couple more minutes, let me know or let us know. Or if you want to move on to the exercises, just, yeah, feel free to let Lynn and myself know. Where is the energy? The energy is good.
And I will add my contact information in the chat too. So if you have some follow-up questions or thoughts after we break away, you'll have a way to contact me as well, and look forward to staying in touch with everybody.
Okay, fabulous. Well, with that, Lynn, on behalf of the group, thank you so much. It was very insightful. Thank you for sharing your experience, your thoughts around confidence. I loved everyone's comments. Love the advice, especially here, the techniques. You're evaluating your own strengths and just, you know, brought in an idea about listing everyone's strengths on a spreadsheet and connecting with each other. So I think that's all very, very valuable because it is that sort of self-reflection, right, to build that confidence. So thank you so much for the reminder. It was a pleasure to have you.
And I'll just end with one thing. It's like, definitely think of yourself as a 4+, no matter where you are. It's like, it's like there's 2s in there. I mean, we need to up that confidence level up because you really know more than you give yourself credit for. Yeah. And, you know, if you just go through that exercise and it's like, you might think, oh, no, I'm a 2 or I'm a 3, but it's like, no, you're a 4 or 5 or 5.5. It's like expertise that you really, and assets that you can bring to somebody that you might not be aware that you do. So be sure to think of yourself in that way. It's like everybody has gifts that they can, and knowledge and experience that they can bring to someone else, and you'd be surprised at how valuable some of that is, and don't shortchange yourself on that.
Yeah, thank you. Very valuable advice, right? All right, with that, we are going to move to the more practical side of the session. And so I just want to remind you of our learnings as we get into our practice. So you might have remembered this model. We shared it for a second session where you start with the small talk, the rapport building, getting into your comfort zone, getting into that rich dialogue. And we talked about coaching in the last session. So you may recall the T-GROW model. And so hopefully you have that resource on hand as you think about your relationships, not only right now when we're practicing in a safe setting with each other, but as Ale mentioned, and Shiri, you getting into your practical experience, shadowing a real session and also practicing mentoring live with real, mentees and so forth. So with that, what I'd like for us to do is just think about our first meeting. So we're going to get into pairs. Really, the purpose is on the connectivity and on those sharing those first, the shared experiences, I suppose, with each other. Agreeing on the shared purpose, aka the goals of the session. So you will be sort of real playing / role playing here, but trying to sort of make it as real as possible with choosing a role. Whoever wants to go first as a mentor. Remember, we're practicing mentoring, and then the other person will be the mentee. And just thinking about that first meeting and having a discussion for 5 minutes, where then the next 5 or so minutes will be just on feedback. So I've updated the slides, but it's not showing up here as Lynn was talking. We'll have 15 minutes for that, and it's going to be in pairs, not in groups of 3. So disregard those. I'm not sure if we can, let me see if I can stop presenting and present again, because it's going to be confusing for everybody. So give me one moment, because I am conscious of time. There we go. 1 second. I'm going to share this again. So hopefully you see, yes, great, it's updated. All right. So these are the instructions. Mentor mentees in groups of 2. Preparing for your first meeting, discussing for 5 minutes. Mentee will share a couple minutes, 2 or so minutes of feedback. You switch, and then the other person goes as a mentor, 15 minutes, and each person has that 5-minute share, 2 to 3 minutes for feedback. So let's get going in the interest of time. Hopefully that's clear, and then we'll get you back. Again, the purpose here is the connectivity, finding shared experiences, and agreeing on a shared purpose / goals if you get to that. So with that, are we ready? Yes, fantastic. So let's go into our breakout room. Let's do a little bit of a debrief because I know we're running out of time. So how was it? How much of a connection did you establish? Was it challenging from a rapport perspective? And I guess more importantly, what techniques did you use that worked well in your practice? All right, got some stuff happening in the chat, feedback. Yes, Razia, thank you. Fantastic. Any takeaways? Pamela.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to be in the breakout room with Rosa Costes. She's a very, very, very interested person. We talked about their platform. She's an entrepreneur, and it's very, very interesting, all the things she told me. And I think it was very easy. We were very, very relaxed, talking like if we met from before, and it's the first time we talk. And what else? Well, one of the things we come out and or we have in common, we were talking about the hardworking. She's their own boss and she works a lot. And I was telling that I in the corporate world and I work very hard, and sometimes it's because myself. I give much work to myself, and I think I was telling her that this is not something that someone told you. You have to work harder, but it's ourselves who make us do that. So it was really nice to meet you, Rosa. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Fantastic. So some good rapport building, like that you said, sort of the ease of the conversation, right? That it flows when you're just natural, you come into it, establish rapport, get to know each other, find some commonalities, which is exactly what you're going to be doing as you meet new people, and probably what you do already, you know, in your current or past experiences mentoring. So thank you so much. One last one. Someone else before we move on to the next exercise? Okay, so what we're going to do is another breakout in groups of 2. And this one, we're kind of escalating it a little bit to a tricky scenario. So here, the purpose very much being to gain confidence when dealing with something difficult or an unforeseen scenario. So very similar to the last one, getting in groups of 2. One of you is going to be mentor, one of you is going to mentee, and then you're going to switch the roles. And you're going to choose a challenge, which I'll share in the next slide. One challenge each. Hopefully, yeah, I would encourage you to choose something, you know, each that's different, not the same one. And then very similar fashion, you speak for about 5 minutes, and then you get the feedback for about another sort of 2 to 3, 5 minutes as well. So we are going to have a little bit longer as we're in the half-hour sort of mark. And these are the tricky scenarios. So first one, in a meeting with your mentee, and there are sort of unclear expectations. For example, the goals are not set, there's misalignment, you know, the sort of the contract that you set at the start goes in all sorts of ways, shapes, and directions. And you've realized that you don't necessarily know where you're going, as does the mentee. So what happened there with unclear expectations. The second one is if the relationship fizzles out, and so you are meeting your mentee and all of a sudden there's silence, there's not much going on. How do you address it? How can you probe to what's going on and why perhaps, the mentee is not engaged in the relationship? And then the third one is if your relationship, your mentoring takes more, or it's, every time or most of the times that you're meeting, it's taking a sort of a quote unquote a therapeutic or therapy route, where they're asking a lot of you from an emotional standpoint. So how would you deal with someone like that in a respectful way, right? So just 3 scenarios that you may encounter or may have encountered already, but I think it's important to practice in a safe setting. How would you deal? How would the conversation flow? What are some techniques that you might be able to use based on maybe what you've learned already in these modules, or on it based on experience? So we will put you in, again, groups of 2. You have a little bit more time, 20 minutes, and then we'll bring you back for a debrief and for a close. Marcela, go ahead.
So the mentee has to tell the mentor what scenario are we doing, right? And then just give them context. Exactly. and start acting as it was like that. Okay.
Yeah. So you're role playing. And then you as a mentor, the whole practice is for you as a mentor. How would you deal with it? What are some techniques that you would use to alleviate the situation? So let's go ahead. And so again, think of a scenario. And as you get into groups, you might have picked the same scenario, but fine if you want to do that. But I encourage you to pick 2 different ones. So you hear 2 different ways of dealing with those. So let's go ahead and do that. If we can get into breakout rooms, fantastic. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. So how was the more tricky experience? Good, the bad, the ugly, the fab. Belen.
I wanted to share the scenarios that me and Oriana took. She took the first one, and the way I treated it was like this. She exposed an kind of abstract situation, or at least she expected to do that, but I identified keywords and asked with key questions so I could help her to take a direction and get closer to the solution. That's what I did. And I took the third scenario where I tried to take the more therapy route.
Yeah.
But something really cool that she did was the situation that I exposed was it explained to me that the situation that I exposed wasn't even enough to consider that it had taken a therapy route, because it had everything to do with my professional career, my challenges, and my job. I explained to her that I kind of feel anxious and stuff, and she told me, but it has everything to do. And she helped me change and shift my focus of it. It was very cool. She directed the session.
Right. So yes, I think we spoke about that, right? As some of the techniques of sort of what going back to what is the goal of the session. Obviously, you were human, things happen. So acknowledging that you're coming in, perhaps the mentee's coming in with a lot of stuff based on the previous meeting or something happening, acknowledgement of that and how best you can help with the time that you have, and kind of rephrasing, okay, the goal of the session is, but where is the energy? Do you need a moment? Do you want to continue? So I think, those are great points, being respectful and sort of redirecting the conversation if it's appropriate. Thank you, Belen. We have time for one more before we wrap up. Anybody else want to share? Oriana. Yes, lovely to hear from you. Hi.
Hi, Lucero. I was with Belen. Maybe this is complementary to what she said.
Okay.
What, what I uh, what I was feeling is like, hey, how do I identify if this has become a therapeutic session, right? Because I'm talking to a human being who's explaining me so many things that we all go through in our professional experiences. So maybe the first question was, how is this affecting your professional life? And maybe just validating what you're feeling is what we all go through, or many people go through, especially during COVID. Maybe not especially during COVID, but it's helped to visualize how we're not happy, right, in our professional experiences. And how do you ask yourself the question, like, am I living like automatized process or something, or am I doing what I really love and enjoy, and I'm happy, right? So I feel like it's important sometimes just to listen out and discard this thing that's telling you this is not professional, because we're all human beings and we're going through the same things. And that helps us connect and also validate that this can happen and affect severally, yes, your professional life, and the way you conduct your work, and the way you act with your colleagues, and etc. So
yeah,
that was it.
Thank you, Ariana. And I think, yeah, you're kind of emphasizing again sort of the human aspect, right? And acknowledging at the end of the day, you're both human. Yes, you're a mentor to the mentee, but I think it's important just to recognize what's going on for the individual, how best you can help with the time that you have at that moment that you're there with them, right? Because it's finite, that you will end the sort of session and they'll go on. But just being cognizant of what can I best help them with the moment that we are together, and how can I support them throughout. So thank you for that. I hope the exercise was helpful. I know we didn't have much time to debrief, but in the deck we do have the toolkit that I started to go over last week. And this week we will have, you'll see, if you didn't see that, yes, last week, because I think we shared the whole toolkit, but towards the end, you see, again, some tips to help you deal with tricky scenarios, to help you deal with how do you overcome, some of these scenarios that I mentioned, if it's going the therapeutic route, or, missed expectations or misalignment. What could you do as a mentor? How to end the relationship as well. There's techniques around that. So I really encourage you to have a go, to have a, go through the slides, read through, and just sort of process the information. Again, the toolkit is there to have. So depending on the scenarios, the context, or relationships, you may pull into it, you may not, but it's always a good reference point to have at hand. So I really encourage you to have a go. There's lots of information there. And so that's just something for you to have, as we're not sort of going in depth through that in the session. So with that, I know we're at time. If you can write in the chat really quickly, what's a key takeaway that you gained from today? That would be lovely to hear as we wrap up today. Just a key learning, what resonated with you from everything from Lynn's conversation to the breakouts to the techniques that we shared. Please share in the chat. It would be fantastic. And then here's my son. He's frustrated now. And so, yeah, please share in the chat a key learning. And then, as Shuri said, we have next week's session where we're going to hear from panel members. And so we look forward to that. But key learnings, share please in the chat, would be fantastic. If not, we look forward to seeing you next week. So thank you very much for your engagement. Thank you very much for everything. Fantastic. They're starting to come in. And with that, have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you, Lynn, again. Fantastic. Thank you for the engagement. And we look forward to
everyone.
Next week. Thank you.